Listen to me. If you're going to live this life to the fullest, you've got to get out of your own head. You're not stuck because of the world. You're stuck because of your thoughts. Your brain is running laps around your blessings, and it's time to tell it to sit down. Overthinking is the enemy of execution. So many people are sitting on dreams, assignments, callings, and ideas, not because they're lazy, but because they're stuck in their own minds. They've convinced themselves they need to figure it all out before they start. But the truth is, while you're busy thinking, someone else is busy building. While you're overanalyzing every possible outcome, someone else is stepping out, making mistakes, learning, growing, and getting closer to their breakthrough. Execution is the bridge between potential and results. But overthinking breaks that bridge before you even take your first step across it. You can have all the passion, all the preparation, and all the resources, but if you don't move, if you don't act, then none of that will matter. Overthinking kills more dreams than failure ever will. Because failure teaches you something. Overthinking keeps you in the same place, silent, still, and scared. It's easy to confuse preparation with procrastination. You tell yourself you're just trying to be wise, trying to be cautious, trying to get things just right. But what you're really doing is feeding fear in the disguise of planning. You're letting doubt hold the pen while you sit there drafting imaginary scenarios of how everything could go wrong. That is not wisdom. That is mental warfare. And if you don't get control of it, your greatest ideas will die in your head instead of being birthed into the world. People think success is just about talent and timing, but it's more about mental discipline. Your brain is like a GPS. If you keep inputting fear, hesitation, and what ifs, it will reroute you every time you get close to purpose. There's a point when thinking turns into stalling. You begin to wait for a perfect time, but that time never comes. You wait for every detail to make sense before you take a single step. But God never promised you a clear map. He promised you his presence. He didn't say you'd see the whole staircase. He said, take the next step. Overthinking is rooted in a need for control, and control is rooted in fear. So the more you think, the more you delay. The more you delay, the more anxious you become. And anxiety grows in delay. The solution? Action, movement, faith, execution. Even imperfect action breaks the grip of fear and pushes you closer to your goal. You weren't created to sit on the sidelines of your life, replaying scenarios in your head. You were created to live with boldness, to move with faith, to walk in purpose. Execution separates those who dream from those who achieve. And let's be real. Some of you are stuck not because God didn't give you the vision, but because you keep talking yourself out of it. You tell yourself you're not ready, not good enough, not qualified. But God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. That vision inside you wasn't a mistake, but now it's up to you to step out, take the risk, and bring it to life. When you execute, you give your mind less room to wander and more room to grow. You start to replace all those fearful thoughts with real experiences, real feedback, real growth. You stop speculating and start learning. You stop waiting and start building. Action gives you data. Execution gives you momentum. And that momentum crushes the lies that overthinking keeps whispering. You can't think your way to confidence. You earn it by doing. Confidence is the byproduct of repeated courage. And courage is the decision to move forward even when the path isn't fully clear. So don't wait until you feel ready. Don't wait until the fear disappears. Move with the fear, move with the doubt, but move. Don't let another week, another month, another year go by where you're still stuck in your head. Get up, take the shot, write the book, launch the business, send the email, make the phone call, take the class, apply for the opportunity, say yes to the assignment, execute. Anxiety comes from trying to control what only God can handle. It's not just about being nervous or stressed. It's about carrying weight that was never meant for your shoulders. So many people wake up every day already drained, already overwhelmed, already in a mental fog. Not because life hit them too hard, but because they've been fighting battles in their mind that only God was supposed to fight. Control feels like security, but in reality, it creates pressure. You keep trying to predict, plan, and protect yourself from every possible outcome. But the truth is, you'll never have full control. Life is too unpredictable. People are too complex. The future is too unknown. The more you try to grip it tighter, the more anxiety slips through your fingers. When you try to take God's job, you end up with the stress He was built to carry. You were created to walk in purpose, not worry. But you've got to be honest with yourself. Are you living in trust, or are you just trying to micromanage your entire life? You pray, but then you take it right back and stress over it all night. It tells you that if you're not in control, everything will fall apart. But God is not asking you to hold it all together. He's asking you to give it to Him. You got to understand this. Peace doesn't come from having all the answers. It comes from knowing who holds the answers. You may not know what's going to happen tomorrow, but you know the one who's already in tomorrow. You may not understand why that door closed, why that relationship ended, why that opportunity passed you by, but trust that nothing slipped through God's fingers. He saw what you didn't see. He knows what you don't know. So instead of running yourself into the ground trying to fix, manage, and overthink every situation, breathe. Release it. Let go of what's not yours to carry. Control is deceptive. It promises peace, but it actually produces panic. You keep checking your phone, checking your email, checking your bank account, rereading the text message, second guessing what you said, replaying the meeting, forecasting rejection, imagining worst case scenarios. And every time you do, your peace is leaking. You can't think your way to peace when your mind is addicted to control. What you need is surrender, not giving up, not quitting, but releasing the illusion that you're the one keeping everything from falling apart. Surrender says, I don't have to understand everything to move forward. I don't have to see the full picture to take the next step. I don't have to control it to have peace. When you stop trying to be the CEO of every part of your life, you start making room for God to work. And when God steps in, anxiety steps out. But that can only happen if you give Him room. Stop praying with one hand open and the other holding on for dear life. God can't bless what you won't release. He can't move in what you're still trying to manage. You don't need more strategy. You need more surrender. You don't need more planning. You need more faith, because faith doesn't demand full control. And here's the thing. When you finally let go, you'll find out that the peace you've been chasing has been waiting for you all along. It's not in the plan. It's in the posture. It's in saying, God, I don't know how this ends, but I know you. I know your character. I know your heart. And I trust you even when I don't trust the situation. That's where anxiety begins to die. Not because life got easier, but because your spirit got stronger. You stopped trying to play God and started trusting the one who actually is. So if you're overwhelmed, anxious, and worn down from trying to control every outcome, pause, look up, release it. You were never meant to carry it all. You were meant to trust. You were meant to breathe. You were meant to move forward with confidence, knowing that even when you can't see the road, God is guiding your steps. Stop carrying what God already promised to handle. Let it go and watch your anxiety turn into peace. Your mind should serve you, not sabotage you. The most powerful weapon you have in your life is not your talent, your bank account, or your network. It's your mind. What you believe, what you focus on, and how you speak to yourself determines the direction of your life. But too many people have allowed their mind to become their greatest enemy instead of their strongest ally. You wake up every day already battling thoughts that say you're not good enough, you're going to fail, nobody cares, you'll never be free from anxiety, and you treat those thoughts like they're facts. But just because a thought comes into your mind doesn't mean it belongs there. Not every thought is true. Not every thought is helpful. You have to filter it, test it, and choose whether it deserves your attention. Because if you don't take control of your mind will take control of you. Think about this. Your mind is like a garden. Whatever you plant, it will grow. If you plant fear, it'll grow more fear. If you plant doubt, you'll harvest confusion. But if you plant faith, discipline, and truth, you'll begin to see clarity, peace, and strength. The problem is, most people don't realize they're the ones doing the planting. They think they're victims of their thoughts, when really, they're participants. You feed your mind with what you watch, what you listen to, who you talk to, and how you speak to yourself. If all you're feeding it is negativity, comparison, and self-criticism, how do you expect to live a life of peace and confidence? You got to flip the script. You got to start treating your mind like a battlefield that needs guarding. The enemy knows he can't take your purpose, so he attacks your mindset. He fills it with anxiety, discouragement, shame, and distraction, not to destroy your life, but to delay it. Because if he can keep you in mental chaos, you'll never have the clarity to move forward. You'll be stuck in your own head, doubting your gifts, replaying your mistakes, shrinking back from opportunities. But the word says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That means you have the power to change your thinking. You don't have to accept every thought that comes. You can reject it, replace it, and renew your mind daily. The truth is, most of the limitations in your life don't come from your circumstances, they come from your thinking. You've convinced yourself you can't start the business because you don't have enough money. You've convinced yourself you can't get healthy because you failed before. You've convinced yourself you'll never find peace because your past is too broken. But that's your mind talking, not your reality. Your thoughts are not your identity. Every time shame shows up, you speak grace over it. You are not your thoughts. You are not your worst days. You are not your mistakes. You are who God says you are, called, chosen, strong, and able. But you have to remind yourself of that every day, because your mind will drift toward negativity unless you discipline it toward truth. And discipline takes work. It takes intention. It means getting up every day and choosing what you think about. It means catching yourself when you start spiraling. It means speaking life when your flesh wants to speak fear. It means declaring, I will not let my mind bully my purpose today. You were created with a sound mind, not a scattered one, but you've got to protect it. Feed it wisely. Challenge the lies. Rehearse the truth. Your mind was meant to help you, not hurt you. So it's time to take it back. No more letting your thoughts run wild. No more sitting in silence while your inner critic tears you down. No more allowing fear to narrate your story. Take back your mind and you take back your life. Because once your mind is aligned, everything else follows. Your choices, your emotions, your habits, your direction. So train it, guard it, and use it. Because when your mind serves your purpose, nothing can stop your progress. Action is the antidote to anxiety. When you're stuck in your head, going in circles, thinking about all the things that could go wrong, all the things that already went wrong, and all the things you wish were different, you start to drown in your own thoughts. Anxiety doesn't always come from the situation. It often comes from inaction, from sitting too long with the fear, from staying still when you should have stepped forward, from analyzing the problem instead of attacking it. Your brain was never meant to carry every possibility at once. But that's exactly what overthinking does. It traps you in what ifs and worst case scenarios. And the longer you wait, the louder it gets. The more you pause, the more powerful the fear becomes. The more you overthink, the more you convince yourself it's safer not to try. That's why the only way out of that mental trap is to move. You don't need to feel ready to move. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to see 10 steps ahead. You just need to take one step. Action cuts through the noise. It brings you back to reality. Because your mind will tell you all kinds of stories. But when you move, you test those stories against truth. You might be scared to have the conversation, but once you do, you realize it wasn't as bad as you imagined. You might be afraid to start the project, but once you begin, you find a rhythm. You might be anxious about what people will say, but once you show up anyway, you realize their opinion wasn't worth the fear. Action dismantles lies that anxiety tries to build in your mind. And it's not about taking giant leaps every time. Sometimes it's just getting out of bed, making the call, writing the first sentence, showing up to the gym, turning off the distraction, praying when you don't feel like it. These aren't huge, flashy moves, but they're powerful because they break the pattern of paralysis. When you take action, even a small one, you start to gain momentum. And momentum is the enemy of anxiety. When you move, your brain starts focusing on what you can control instead of obsessing over what you can't. Too often, we wait for the fear to go away before we act. But courage doesn't work like that. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's movement in spite of it. If you're waiting for your anxiety to disappear before you go after what God called you to do, you'll be waiting forever. But if you don't act, your anxiety has nothing to compete with. Action gives your spirit evidence. Evidence that you are not your fear. Evidence that you can do hard things. Evidence that God's grace meets you on the move. Every major turning point in life comes down to a decision to move. Not when it's comfortable, not when it's certain, but when it's necessary. There are doors that only open when you knock. There are breakthroughs that only come when you press. There are opportunities that only show up when you're in motion. But anxiety keeps you passive. It tells you to wait until you're more qualified, more confident, more in control. But faith says go anyway. Faith says move and I'll meet you on the way. That's why action is so powerful. It says to your anxiety, you don't run this. It says to your fear, you don't get the final word. You can't think your way into peace. You have to act your way into it. Sometimes the clarity comes after the step, not before it. So whatever's been paralyzing you, whatever you've been overthinking, decide today to take the first step. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Make the call, write the email, post the content, apply for the position, ask for help, sign up for the class, face the fear. Whatever your anxiety has been screaming at you to avoid, do the opposite. Not because you don't feel afraid, but because you refuse to let fear make your choices anymore. You're not powerless. You're not stuck. You're not a prisoner to your thoughts. You've got the key, and the key is action. Use it, move, and watch anxiety lose its grip, one step at a time. Your identity is stronger than your insecurity. So many people are paralyzed by overthinking and anxiety because they've built their identity around their fears, failures, and flaws. They say things like, I'm just an anxious person, or I always mess things up, or I've never been good enough. And the more you repeat those things, the more you believe them. Before long, you're not just dealing with anxiety. You've made it your identity. You've labeled yourself with your struggle, and now you're living from a place of defeat before you even begin. But hear me clearly, what you struggle with is not who you are. You are not your mistakes. You are not your worst moment. You are who God says you are. And He calls you chosen, loved, capable, and victorious. Anxiety thrives when you forget who you are. It grows in the gap between your true identity and the lies you've started to believe. When you don't know who you are, you're more likely to believe everything fear whispers. You're more likely to shrink, hesitate, and run. But when you are grounded in your God-given identity, anxiety begins to lose its grip. Because even when the fear comes, even when the doubts rise, you've got a deeper truth anchoring you. You can say, this is how I feel, but it's not who I am. And that shift in mindset is powerful. It allows you to act based on truth, not emotion. It allows you to push through the fear without being owned by it. We live in a world that's quick to label you based on your weakness, but God defines you by your destiny, not your deficiency. He looks at you and sees purpose even when you feel broken. He sees growth even when you feel stuck. He sees strength even when you feel anxious. The world might call you a failure, but God calls you a fighter. And when you start to embrace that truth, Your entire posture changes. You stop overthinking every move because you realize your identity isn't on the line every time you make a mistake. You stop letting fear run your life because your worth isn't based on how things turn out. It's based on who you already are. The problem is most people never take the time to build their identity on truth. They build it on achievement, approval, perfection, or performance. So when they fall short, their whole identity falls apart. But when your identity is built on the unshakable truth of who God made you to be, you can face failure and still stand strong. You can battle anxiety and still show up. You can hear fear but not obey it because your foundation is solid. Your value is not up for debate. Your worth is not determined by your situation. This is why renewing your mind is so important. Every day you are bombarded with voices trying to define you. Social media, culture, comparison, fear, shame. If you don't intentionally speak truth over your life, you'll unintentionally start believing lies. You've got to fight back. You've got to remind yourself daily, I am not my anxiety. I am not my past. I am not my performance. Even if I feel anxious, even if I stumble, I will not let insecurity lead my life. There will always be moments when you feel afraid. That's human. But fear doesn't have to be your identity. You don't have to carry anxiety like a name tag. And when you choose to stand on truth, when you choose to believe what God says about you, when you choose to act from identity instead of insecurity, your mindset begins to change. You stop being a victim to your emotions and you start walking in authority. So if you've been walking around defeated, believing you'll always be anxious, always be stuck, always be insecure, it's time to stop agreeing with that lie. That's not who you are. You were created for more. You were created to walk in confidence, not confusion. You were created to live in purpose, not panic. Your identity is secure. Your value is set. Don't let anxiety rewrite the story God already finished. Stand up, speak truth, and step into the person you were born to be. You don't have to figure it all out. You just have to trust the process. One of the biggest causes of overthinking and anxiety is the pressure we put on ourselves to have everything perfectly planned out. We want all the answers before we make the first move. We want the whole map before we take one step. We want guarantees before we trust the journey. But life doesn't work like that. Growth doesn't work like that. God doesn't work like that. If you wait for every detail to be clear, you'll never move. If you wait for perfect conditions, you'll never start. Faith is not built in certainty, it's built in movement. It's built in the middle. It's built when you trust that even though you don't have it all figured out, God does. The reason you're anxious is not because you're weak, it's because you're trying to carry something that was never yours to carry. Control. Control is heavy. Control is exhausting. Control will keep you up at night trying to play out every possible outcome. It'll make you replay conversations, analyze decisions, and delay progress because you're afraid to mess up. But life is not a puzzle you solve. It's a process you live. And sometimes you won't understand why it's taking so long. Sometimes you won't know why God closed the door or why things aren't lining up yet. But that doesn't mean you're off track. It just means you're in the middle of the process. The process is where God does his best work. Not on the mountaintop. Not when everything is clear. But in the confusion, in the waiting, in the silence. See, you want to be comfortable, but God wants you to grow. And growth only happens in uncertainty. When you choose to trust, even when you don't see the full picture, that's when you grow strong. That's when your mind starts shifting from anxiety to anticipation. You stop fearing the unknown and start expecting good things, even in the dark. You got to stop trying to master the future and start being faithful in the present. The pressure to figure it all out isn't from God. It's from fear. And fear will always lie to you. It'll say, if you don't control everything, everything will fall apart. But God says, if you trust me, I hold it all together. The word says in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. That's not just a cute verse. It's a survival guide for peace. It's a roadmap for getting out of your head and into your purpose. The process won't always make sense, but it always has purpose. Every delay, every detour, every struggle is shaping something in you. Trust is saying, even if I don't get it, I'll keep going. It's saying, even when I don't feel peace, I'll walk in obedience. It's saying, even when I can't see the way, I know God is making one. That kind of mindset doesn't eliminate anxiety instantly, but it starves it. It removes its power. Because now your hope isn't in your plan, it's in God's promise. You have to get comfortable with not knowing, with unanswered questions, with unresolved situations. That's not weakness, that's faith. Real trust is built when you say, God, I don't know how this ends, but I know you're with me in it. You stop waiting for perfect peace before you move and start realizing that peace is found in the movement. That's when the pressure starts to lift. That's when the anxiety starts to lose its grip. Not because everything's perfect, but because your posture changed. You're not controlling anymore, you're trusting. You're not forcing it, you're flowing with it. So let this be your reminder. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to see the finish line. You just need to take the next step. Breathe. Let go of the pressure. Trust. He's guiding, even when you don't see it. Keep going, keep trusting, keep walking through the process. Because everything you need is being built in it.